Gentlemen, I say good afternoon to you all. Let me also join the Honorable Minister of Information to appreciate the gentlemen of the media for the consistent support they have extended to this government in airing the activities of government and supporting all the laudable activities of this administration to give to the people the quality lives that they deserve, and the gradual delivery of all the electoral promises of our principal, the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, under his renewed hope agenda. We thank you so much for the support, and we hope that we'll sustain this cordial relationship to the end of this administration. The event of this afternoon is quite important to us all, given the importance of power to our daily lives and the centrality of the power sector to achieving sustainable economic growth and industrial development. The power sector is quite unique compared to all the other sectors because everybody is affected by electricity. Every household, every business, every institution, be it health or educational institutions, and every industry is affected. And I've said it in the past that one of the major contributors to consistent depreciation in value of our currency has been our heavy dependence on imports, which is why this administration has taken it as one of its cardinal activity to achieve import substitution and export promotion. And when you talk about import substitution and export promotion, local production comes into play. There's no way you talk about local production without the energy. So energy is important and central to the activities of government. This is going to be an interactive session, but before then, we'll take just 15 to 20 minutes to provide an overview of the power sector and the activities of our ministry and our agencies to ensure that we transform the sector to the standard that we all aim for. I'll provide that overview. But as to the technical details of the recent increase in tariff for a portion of the consumers, which is just 15%, branded as Band A customers, I have my colleague here, Dr. Musli Hosseini, that will provide some insight into the technical details, and will now take questions and answers. Firstly, let me appeal to the general public and electricity consumers, including you and I, to display some level of understanding with whatever policy or whatever pronouncement that this administration comes up with. And let us maintain the trust and confidence that we have reposed in this government. This government was voted in democratically based on the trust and confidence of the electorate. The can-do spirit that you observed in Mr. President is still there. He has done it elsewhere before now in Lagos State, and we hope and we believe that he's going to replicate the same at the federal level together with his hard-working team. Power is critical to optimal performance of other sectors. There's no sector that can perform optimally without stability in the power sector. And Mr. President has resolved to use the power sector to drive the delivery of his laudable objectives of sustainable economic growth and industrial development under the renewed hope agenda. We are all aware of the current hardships that citizens are passing through based on some tough decisions, but necessary decisions that government has taken in the recent past about removal of fuel subsidy, about harmonization of the dual exchange rates. We know that this has led to a lot of things. The inflation rate is there. The devaluation of the Naira is there. And the increase in prices of goods and services. These are enough hardships that government is not ready to aggravate at any rate. We are all aware of this. So government will not deliberately come up with a policy to worsen an already bad situation that we are struggling to come out of, which I believe they are necessary pains if you are targeting some gains in this sector. And Mr. President is also committed to transforming the power sector. For the first time in the history of this sector, we have been bold enough and we have been committed enough to address the fundamental issues that have been the bane of the power sector in this country. We all believe that when a system or a structure is passing through repair, is passing through transformation, is passing through revamping, it does not necessarily mean a complete disappearance of the existing pain. In fact, in some cases, it might mean aggravation of the pain in the short time for us to achieve a permanent gain. My favorite example has always been road construction. We're all aware of the hardship people passed through when they were renovating the Tubman Bridge. A particular lane was closed and everybody was passing just a single lane. It was a lot of traffic and inconvenience. But today, that they have finished the renovation, everybody passes through the bridge without any hitch. Another example was the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, which was a notorious road before now. For 12 to 15 years, when this road was passing through renovation and reconstruction, there was serious pains. Pains that were even greater than what we used to experience. There were gridlocks. People spent a whole day. People spent nights on these roads. And I've personally witnessed a wedding ceremony that took place on that particular road because of gridlock. But today, on completion of that road, there is no single traffic gridlock, and everybody passes it smoothly. So I want to plead for understanding. I want to plead for patience, and I want to plead for your trust and confidence that you should exercise some patience with government, that we are addressing the root cause of the problem in the power sector. Past administration may not have been bold enough to address this issue. But because we are sincere with our resolve to transform this sector to be comparable to what we witnessed in other countries in the West and the Far East, we must pass through some necessary and unavoidable pains. At the Power Ministry, our core mandate, to remind you again, is to expedite national development through formulation of policies and establishment of systems, structures, and institutions that will guarantee the long-term sustainability of the power sector to be able to provide functional, reliable, affordable, and cost-effective electricity to households, to businesses, to institutions, and to industries. So we have the policy formulators as the ministry. We also have the regulators that ensure that the operators comply with the policy formulated. That is the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission, the NEC. Then we have the operators at the third level. The operators are the players, both public and private sector players, across the three segments of the power sector value chain. We have the generating companies. In fact, let me start out by saying that we have the gas producing companies that supply gas to the power generating companies. Then we have the transmission company, which is the long distance transportation of power. Then we have the distribution companies that drop power into our households, businesses, and industries. These are the layers in the power sector. So there are a few things that are necessary that we must achieve. Number one is achieving an operational sustainability of the operators on cost recovery. Anybody that goes into any business, the first intention is to recover costs, then if possible, make some profit. The moment you cannot cover your costs, the sustainability of such business is doubtful. It will be run aground. But this cost recovery can either be through commercial pricing or a subsidized pricing. Commercial pricing is when the entire cost of producing power is transferred 100% plus the profit to the consumers of power. Subsidized pricing regime is when the consumers are not allowed to pay the full cost of production plus markup, and government has pledged to pay a portion of this on their behalf. That is the regime that we are in Nigeria. We are in a subsidy pricing regime, whereby government provides a large portion of the cost of producing, of transmitting, and of redistributing power. And I must tell you that as of today, before the introduction of the tariff increase, government is subsidizing nothing less than 67% of the cost of producing, transmitting, and distributing electricity in Nigeria. At the current exchange rate, this is going to translate into 2.9 trillion naira for 2024. This is more than 10% of the national budget. Power sector is just a single sector out of so many sectors that government has to attend to. We have the works, we have housing, we have education, we have health, we have defense, and so on and so forth, that are all competing for this meager revenue from the government. So it will be very, very insensitive on our part to force or compel governments to continue to subsidize at that rate of almost 3 trillion for the power sector alone. We just have to be realistic and considerate. We also must ensure that the regulators are independent and there is consequence management for non-compliance by the operators in terms of punishment meted out to a non-complying power sector player, be it a distribution company, the transmission company, or any of the generating companies. Then the last one that we must achieve at the ministry is consumer protection and value for money. Whatever consumer pays for, there must be commensurate value for it. Complaints of customers must be promptly attended to by the power sector operators. Then, from the policy formulation perspective, the recent increase in tariff for only band A customer, which is just 15% of electricity consumers in Nigeria, as at the latest statistics, is a little above 12 million customers in the sector. And this will only affect about 1.5 million customers. The remaining 10.5 million customers will continue to enjoy government subsidy at about almost 70%. And the reason why we did this will be explained in a short while. This tariff review is in conformity with our policy trust of maintaining a subsidized pricing regime in the short run or in the short time with a transition plan to achieving a full cost reflective tariff for the sector over, say, a period of 3 years. I've mentioned this in a couple of my media briefings, that it is because of government sensitivity to the sufferings, to the pains of our people, that will not make us to migrate fully into a cost reflective tariff, or in another language, to remove subsidy 100% in the power sector like it was done in the oil and gas sector. Government is so sensitive to the pains of the people, to the sufferings of the people, and we are not ready to aggravate these sufferings any longer, which is why we said it must be a journey rather than a destination. And the journey starts from now, that we should do a gradual migration from the subsidy regime to a full cost reflective regime. And we must start with some customers. This is more like a pilot for us at the Ministry of Power and our agencies. It's like a proof of concept. It's a POC that those that we have the infrastructure sufficient enough, adequate enough, and qualitative enough to deliver stable power that will enjoy between 20 and 24 hours of light should be the ones that we should target. And this set of customers, we have established the capacity and the willingness to pay for this. And it only affects 15% of customers with established capacity and willingness to pay at a service level agreement. The service level agreement is 20 hours at the minimum. And on the overall, I believe, realistically, that if we're able to comply with this service level agreement of 20 hours minimum, it is still far cheaper than the alternative source of diesel and petrol generators. I believe you will agree with me that the average cost of generating a kilowatt hour of power today using diesel and petrol generator is not less than 450 naira to 500 naira because of the capital investment of purchasing the generator, because of the daily operational funding of the fueling of the generator, and because of the regular intermittent servicing of these generators. The cost is no less than 500 naira. So if we are putting the tariff at 225 naira thereabouts, I believe it is more than 50% cheaper than running alternative power. And like I mentioned earlier, that for the first time in many years, government is taking a bold step to address the fundamental issues confronting the power sector. Number one issue, which I believe this step that we have taken is going to address, is the liquidity and pricing issues. This sector has been deprived of the required liquidity to keep it running on a sustainable level, to keep it to continuously being in business, because it is no longer attractive to investors. Even the operators don't have enough liquidity to invest in enhancement of their infrastructures. The generating companies could not pay the gas companies, which is the raw material, which is the feedstock that they use to generate power. The generating companies cannot service their equipment. It's getting to a level that they cannot even pay their salary, the salaries of their workers, because of the accumulated debt in the sector due to lack of liquidity and commercial pricing. And I believe that previous administrations have shied away from addressing this. It's a tough conversation, but we must have it at a point if we are serious about stable power sector in this country. And this government is committed to doing it. It might be painful in the short run, but the gains will come very soon, and the gains shall become permanent. Number two is the infrastructural deficits in the sector. We keep saying it's a three-segment sector: generation, transmission, and distribution. For me, to be more comprehensive, it's a five-segment sector. We have the gas sector with gas production and transportation infrastructure. We have the generating companies, which is the thermal plant, that's the gas-fired power plants, and the hydroelectric power plants. Those are the generators. Then we have the transmission company, which is the transmission segment that has to do with long-distance transportation of power from the point or location of generation to the point of distribution. Those are the high-voltage power lines and towers that we see all over, that people even vandalize. That's number 3. Then we have the distribution sector, which are the last mile segments. They are the ones that people see. They are the ones that take power to our houses, to our businesses, and to our industries. That's the 4th segment. Then the 5th segment, which most people try to overlook, is the consumer segment itself. Because the consumer segment play a major role in this sector too. And it must be well focused and dealt with. And all these segments need to enhance infrastructures. All our power generating, all our gas pipelines are bad. There have been vandalization of the gas pipelines. There have been lack of adequate pressure in the gas pipes, where we need compressors, where we need boosters. The generating companies, their plants are also deteriorating. They are obsolete. The transmission company, the lines have been installed over 50 years. The cables are weak. The towers are falling. People are vandalizing it. The transformers are also weak. I've seen a transformer that was labeled ECN, Electricity Company of Nigeria, which means that it was installed in the 60s. That has not been replaced. The same thing with distribution segments, infrastructures. Transformers are weak. Injection substations are not working. The power lines are deteriorating. The electric poles are falling. And on the consumer segment, we have over 55% meter gap, about 60% meter gap. Out of about 12 million customers that we have, only a little over 5 million are metered. So people are paying on estimated billing. You can see the huge infrastructure deficit across these 5 segments. It requires money for us to enhance these segments. It requires money to replace deteriorating equipment and gadgets, to reconductor, to erect new towers, and to even establish new plants, to repair the pipelines, to install boosters and compressors for adequate pressure. The monies are not coming because of lack of liquidity. Investors are not coming because they could not see a line of sight of recovery of their investments, not to talk of making profits. The bankers are not lending because it is not attractive to lenders. It is not bankable. Bankers cannot see a line of sight on how the money they lend to us will be repaid. So you see that this infrastructural deficit can only be fixed if we improve liquidity in the sector. Then the issue of structural issues in the industry. This sector used to be on the exclusive legislative list of the National Assembly, whereby it was only the federal government that could invest and play in the power sector, whether it's generation, whether it's transmission or distribution. It was only one NEPA that we had. It was only one ECN, one NEPA, one PHCN. Those are structural issues that we believe that it must be a decentralized sector. And Mr. President has made our job so easy by signing into law the Electricity Act of 2023 that has unbundled all the segments in the sector and that has allowed the subnational government, both the state and local government, to play in the sector. That's also allowing the private sector to come in and play in the sector. Those are the issues that we are addressing that have not been addressed in the past. So decentralization is a major issue and we are achieving it. Then consumer protection issue. We have said it that service level agreement is a covenant. If we say we are giving you 20 hours for paying 225 Naira per kilowatt hour, that 20 hours must not be less than 20 hours. If it is less than 20 hours, there must be sanctions. There must be Consequence management. You can clap if you want to clap. I could see that you wanted to clap. Don't let us shy away from our responsibilities. Please. So we thank Mr. President for doing that. And the consumer protection, I've told you, there will be sanctions, there will be consequences on the part of the distributor companies that are not complying. On the part of NEC, if they are not tracking it appropriately. So the first phase that we are going through is a pilot phase and is a proof of concept to drive the DISCO's investment in infrastructure. Once they know they are making money from this band A tariff increase, they will be fast to improve infrastructure in other bands and migrate them to band A, and they will make more money and the industry will be sustained. It's also to drive or accelerate migration of customers to premium bands within a very short period. It's an incentive for them to migrate band B, band C to band A. I listened to NAC yesterday. The band A feeders that we have is over 1,000. But we looked at them, we examined them. Which among these can provide 20 hours of light? And we downgraded over 500. It's only 481 feeders that are currently classified as band A. These are the feeders that are good enough, in very good condition to provide stable, uninterrupted power to the consumers. So we are not sleeping. We are living up to our responsibilities too. But the problem with power is the moment the consumer cannot stand up, switch on the light, and the light shows up, we are not doing anything. So all effort in generation, in transmission, can only be seen if it is translated to distribution to customers. This will also enable the DISCOs to charge appropriate pricing with value for money to customers. We don't just want to increase the tariff. We want the consumers to have value for their money. That is the essence of this. And it is better that we start this journey now so that we can conclude it on time. Because the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step in the right direction. This one is in the right direction, and we want to display the understanding that we deserve. And lastly is to encourage energy consumption management by consumers. One bitter truth that we also need to tell ourselves as Nigerians. We are all Nigerians. A few people are only privileged to sit on the high table here. We are on the same level. We must be able to talk the truth to ourselves. We don't have the culture of consumption management in this country in terms of power, just because of the cheapness of the tariff we pay on power. A lot of people will come back from work. They want to have dinner, or they want to play with their colleagues down the road. They'll switch on the AC for the room to be cooling before they come back. Yes, some people will be going to work in the morning. A freezer has been left on for days. They will still leave it on when all the items in the freezer are already frozen. And 5, 6, 8 hours of their absence will not make it to defreeze. They will still leave it. It will consume power. Just because we are not paying enough. We've all been overseas before. We know how conscious the power consumers are to consumption of electricity. Thank you very much. I will round up soon. So, this will also enable us, thank you very much, this will also enable us to manage our consumption. Hello? Ladies and gentlemen, let me round up this. I want to say this before I round up, that there is also service tracking and consequence management and penalties on consumption. We are carrying out a number of initiatives to ensure that we improve activities and performance of the sector. We have the presidential power initiatives. which we are actually carrying out to ensure that infrastructures are enhanced and improved across the sector, both transmission and the distribution sector. There's also the PMI, the Presidential Monitoring Meter Initiatives, which we are going to discuss elaborately, maybe in another forum, to ensure that we close the huge meter gap that we have in the industry. And we also have a lot of development banks that are working with us with projects in transmission and distribution to ensure that we enhance the activities here. So as a ministry, we are committed to make an impact during this administration. We are ramping up generation by opening up more generation points. An example is the Zongeru that's about to start operation, and we also have our projects in renewable energy across the country. We're also enhancing transmission. We are strengthening the capacity and of the national grid by establishing more substations. We are installing more lines. We are introducing SCADA. That's the security control and data control, which is the automated control of frequency on the national grid that will prevent frequent grid collapse. Then we are trying to look for creative ways to curb vandalization in addition to the effort of the National Security Advisor. Then we are talking about providing the super grid, which is the backup or failover grid. For distribution infrastructure deficiencies, we are installing new lines. We are reconducting the old lines. We are also introducing new injection substations and revamping the existing ones, while we are looking at existing weak distribution transformer. I've mentioned the issue of a reduction of meter gap and investment in communication and advocacy to reorientate and educate our people of the need to cooperate with the operators in the power sector in terms of protecting our national assets, in terms of avoiding power theft, bypassing of meters, and all that. So all these are what we are doing, and we believe that very soon you start seeing the positive results of activities in the power sectors, from policy formulation and execution to control and to operation of the power sector. I would like to stop here and allow the Executive Vice Chairman to talk briefly about the modalities around the recent increase in the tariff of Band A customers, which is just 50% of the total customers. And you have put across to us after the presentation. I think we have 6 questions in total, and I will not waste time in addressing each of these questions in turns. The first question was the question about the status of the Memorandum of Understanding signed with the German government on its G2G agreement on the presidential power initiatives that we all know as a Siemens contract. Am I right? Yes. This agreement was signed in 2018. And due to one reason or the other, there was no major traction in executing these projects. It was an agreement with the German government to employ Siemens to support Nigeria in transforming its power transmission and distribution sector to the tune of a loan of $2.3 billion. But we know that immediately after this signing ceremony, there was COVID that prevented the desired traction on this agreement. And unfortunately, the main champion of the project, who happened to be the then Chief of Staff, late Abba Kyari, may his gentle soul rest in peace, of blessed memory, also passed on. Immediately after this, electoral campaign started and there was election. Then we had transition to a new government. So between 2018 and 2023, nothing serious actually happened on this agreement, on this MOU. They commenced the pilot phase because this project was supposed to be in 3 phases. The pilot phase, the phase 1, and the phase 2. But this pilot phase was not even gotten to any reasonable level until this new government came in. And you are all aware that the German Chancellor visited Nigeria sometime in November. And this was one of the issues discussed with Mr. President. And we got convinced that we needed to continue with this project. So there was an African Trade Summit, African Business Summit in Germany, which Mr. President attended. I accompanied him to the summit, and we had extensive conversations and discussions with our German counterparts on this project. And we were both convinced that it would be in the mutual benefit of the 2 countries for us to proceed on this MOU. And we agreed that we were going to sign an acceleration agreement to kickstart this project all over again. And if you remember that in December at COP28 in Dubai, an acceleration agreement was signed between the Nigerian government and the German government, and between the Siemens Energy and FGN Power Company Limited. We all saw it on the news. After this, we have started the project in earnest. And I'm happy to inform this gathering this afternoon that we are almost concluding the pilot phase of this project. The pilot phase involved a turnkey offshore importation of 10 power transformers and 10 mobile substations for us to use as a POC for this project. And I can tell you that all these items have arrived the country. The 10 power transformers and the 10 power mobile stations. I can also confirm to you that out of the 10 transformers, we have installed and commissioned 5, which was also in the news. I personally commissioned this installation of these power transformers at various locations in the country. The mobile substations, we have installed about 3 out of 10 now, remaining 7. As soon as we finish installation, we are going to commission the mobile substations and energize it, and Nigerians will start seeing the impact of these projects. So we are fully convinced that with the success recorded at the pilot phase of this project, we are moving forward unperturbed on the remaining phases of this project. And the phases include transforming our transmission segment or network by expanding the capacity of transmission and strengthening the transmission to avoid the current fragility that leads to persistent grid collapse. This will involve upgrading of existing power transmission substations, about 14 of them. It's going to those are brownfield stations. It's going to involve establishment of new transmission substations, about 22 of them. It's going to involve installing new transmission power lines and reconductoring of some existing power lines, totaling almost 14,000 kilometers at the transmission segment. The same thing applies to the distribution segment, whereby there will be enhancement of our existing injection substations of the discos. There will be replacement and upgrading of existing 33 kV and 11 kV transformers, numbering about 6,000 transformers. We are also going to reconductor and install new lines, totaling almost 22,000 kilometers of lines. So I believe that once we are done with this first phase of the presidential power initiatives called Siemens Project, Nigerians will start seeing improvement in the strength, in the capacity of the national grid, and in the efficiency and effectiveness of the distribution companies. That is what I have to say about the Siemens projects. I can tell you we are on top of it. And Mr. President is exceptionally committed to seeing this project come to reality. Thank you. Number two is Zungeru. Let me correct this misinformation. Zungeru hydroelectric power plants is completed. The concessioning process is completed. The payment by the concessionaire has been made. The official handing over of these plants has been done to the concessionaire, which is Mainstream Energy, who are the current operators of Kanji and Jeba hydroelectric power plants. The stage we are now is the technical handover by the Chinese consultants that built Zungeru hydroelectric power plants to the concessionaire, because there is a 1-year defect liability period where these contractors need to be on site or the project site to ensure that whatever problem that occurs within the 1 year of handing over, they are able to fix it. So they are working seriously with the concessionaire and the Ministry of Power, together with the Bureau for Public Enterprise, BPE, to ensure that we conclude the technical handover of the plant. And I can tell you that testing started yesterday. That generation of power at the testing stage started yesterday at Zungeru. It will last about 1 or 2 weeks, after which full production will start. And I can tell you on good authority that Zungeru Hydroelectric Power Authority has capacity for evacuating power onto the national grid. It is complete misinformation for anybody to say that it is not connected to the national grid. No. There's no way we will invest such a humongous amount of money and infrastructures will not be put in place to evacuate the power generated onto the national grid. That is a waste and is not allowed. And I must let you know that the Chinese Exim Bank that funded or financed this project will not even allow that. So we have capacity. We can always improve the capacity because of his connection with Shiroro hydroelectric power plants. So it's connected. Thank you for that. And the offtake agreement, which is generally called take or leave agreement, that the federal government signed with some power plants. And you mentioned that you have power plants who never generated 1 kilowatt hour of power and they are being paid for capacity. No way. It is not possible. And it can never be possible under this credible, transparent administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The celebrated case of take or leave capacity payment is Azura power plant, which we all know, that is in Iobo, in Benin. It is beside our NIPP power plant. I can tell you that is about one of the most productive, the most consistent, and the most supportive power plants. In fact, when the grid is down, we use that power plant for black starting. They have never gone out of production. I have personally visited this plant myself. I've inspected the facility, the infrastructures, the state-of-the-art modern production or generating plants. And they've been producing at maximum capacity. And that is what government pays. There is no other power plant that collects money from government without generating power. Nobody will allow that. Not the president, not the Minister of Finance, not the Minister of Power. I can tell you that. Be rest assured. Number 4 is the privatization of the power sector. You are asking, why didn't government reverse this process? That is your personal view. We all know the shortcomings of the privatization process. It is true that it has not achieved all its intended purpose. But I can tell you to a large extent that privatization is the way to go. How we carried it out or implemented it may be a problem. But it is not beyond revival. We can take steps to compel the private sector operators to performance. The kind of investment required in the power sector is humongous. It is huge. Government alone cannot provide the funds for investment in generation, in transmission, and in distribution, number 1. Number 2, government does not really have any business being in business. And facts, empirical facts have shown that in the past, privately run businesses, they do better. They perform better than government businesses. So it was not a wrong decision to privatize some section of our power sector value chain. But the efficiency and the effectiveness depend on the execution of this privatization, which is what this administration is working on. We have to correct all the deficiencies. Our power sector is so unique that every segment of the sector is unique. If you pick generation, is jointly owned. In fact, it's 3 types of ownership. There are some power plants that are 100% privately owned. Geregu is there, Omotosho is there, Omotosho one, Geregu one. Azura is there, Sapele is there, Transcorp Power is there. There are some other sets that are owned by federal government but concessioned to a private operator. That is basically our hydropower plants. Jeba is there, Kanji is there, Shiroro is there, Kashimbila is there. Gurara is there. Dadinkowa is also there. Ownership, federal government, running is private sector on concession basis. Zungeru is also there, the new recent one. Then the third set are government-owned thermal gas-fired power plants, which are the ones built under the Nigerian Integrated Power Project, NIPP. They are all owned under the NDPH, which is the Niger Delta Power Holding Company. These are government businesses. But let me tell you, compare NDPHC plants today with any of the privately owned. They are better run. Yes, they are better run. So what we need to do is to look for a solution whereby it is in the hands of the private sector, but NAC as the regulator will ensure that they not only perform optimally, they also have the interest of the masses at heart. That's why government cannot fully liberalize the power sector today. If it's fully liberalized like the communication sector or the oil and gas sector, we will not be sitting down here discussing tariff, because the private sector will only give you prices that is good for their business. But we cannot leave it because of the centrality and criticality of the power sector to individual households, to businesses, to commercial institutions, and to industries. So we will make the best of the bad situation. That's what we are trying to do. I agree with you. Number 5 is 15% of the customers. You're saying, how did we establish the capacity and willingness to pay? When discussions get to this kind of level, we should all be open. Between you and me, 90% of the customers that fall under this band A, we know ourselves. Yes. If they take light, these people will not hesitate to put on their generators. Diesel generators, 500 kVA, 250, 200, 100, thousands of liters of diesels, petrol generators. So they even pay for more expensive alternative. And what we are saying is, for those that in this 15%, we are not saying pay arbitrarily. There is a service covenant. We will give you 20 hours and you pay for it. And there's no perfect situation. We might say that all the customers, preponderance of them can afford to pay 90%. But there will still be one or two. Just like you mentioned, you said one estate, I don't know, Kado estate, that they may not have the capacity. What I would advise is frugality, efficient consumption management. It is not about what you pay per kilowatt hour. It's about consumption. We have to be as efficient in managing our consumption too. And if 20 hours is not in that estate, report to NAC. They are ready to downgrade them. Am I right? Yes. They are ready to downgrade them. Let me tell you one thing before we round up, please. With conscious and efficient consumption management, sincerely, at the new rate, we may have households that will still pay about the same bill. Yes, it's possible. Based on consumption management. We may have. So I implore us to be very prudent in consuming electricity. It is no longer cheap for band A. But this policy is pro-poor, like the EVC put it. It is pro-poor. The high-end people, they are the ones that are enjoying this subsidy more than others. But they consume more. And the portion of what they enjoy is more than what the poor are enjoying. We are saying no. Let them pay the right price. And let the poor breathe too. Thank you. Lastly, capacity to pay established, Kado Estate. I think I've mentioned that. I think that's the last one. Thank you very much for that. Yes.
The arrival of our chief host and our special guest into the hall, please. Please, let's maintain silence, please. May we please rise as we take the national prayer, which of course is the second stanza of the national anthem. O God of creation,